Welcome everybody to my very first tabletop gameplay I have done on this channel. I'm really excited to bring you this new Greninja counter box deck I have been working on against two very good friends of mine. First we have Glenn Payne, I will link his TikTok down below, and Mike Wachowski. But yeah, here we go. We have Greninja with the Zoroarks. The Zoroark's in there for God of War mainly, but you do see it come up in a couple of situations in this game. And I think the list is pretty straightforward apart from that, but I will go into some of the more intricate card placements throughout the game that you see. And then next up we have Glenn's deck, which is his own sort of iteration of Gholdengo with Firebreather and Ceruledge. Again, it's sort of a straightforward idea and a little twist on something that's already very good in the format in Gholdengo, except we're using that Firebreather for the big burst damage instead of those Zoroark and Lunatones. And then, of course, the two Ceruleges giving you a really nice time into the mirror as well. So, without further ado, let's get into these games. I'm not going to say how many because that would give away the storyline of this, but there is one game that sort of is quite one-sided, and then there is a game two that is a real stormer and a real good showcase of what this Greninja deck can do. So sit back, enjoy my amazing tones, my commentary as I take you through these games. See you on the other side. So let's get this started. As you can see, I am on the left with my lovely new champion Mega Venusaur mat from the Mega Evolution League Cups. Played EV Box to go and get that. Might as well fill this empty space with a little bit of information. And Glenn on the right with a Snorlax mat that I got him for his birthday last year. How cute am I? But from an artist that we both really like. Got it off of their Etsy, so that's really cool. That is not a hair on the Snorlax mat. That is in fact a pen mark that he ruined his lovely present with. But me just shuffling up. For anyone that cares at all, I really like the dual mat Dragon Shields. I think at the minute I've been rocking the Gooseberries. Really nice color of green. Green's probably my favorite color, and that sort of like olivey gooseberry green is something that I really like. Glenn just adjusting the camera there a little bit. It adjusts again just to get a little bit more straight as well further on with the game, because Mike let us know it's a bit wonky. Because Glenn's mat is ever so slightly smaller than mine. And then I'm pretty sure Glenn is rocking the fire sleeves, just the normal dual mat fire or crimson, I think it is, dragon shield. So for anyone who knows that, always repping the dragon shields. There is no other brand for me. But the coin flip, both of our decks want to go first. I think that for Greninja, if you're going blind into any matchup, you're pretty much always going first. The water energy attachment on turn one is always super important, just because that means on the second turn, against any sort of evolving deck, the opportunity to Mirage, which is now my favorite thing to say, is obviously an opportunity you can take. It's not always something that's correct to do. If your hand is a little bit more dead, you do still want to do just 170 and go into your deck and draw any card that you like and put it in your hand. But definitely an option against Gholdengo. That is actually how I want to go about going through this matchup. I think against normal Gholdengo, I've found that I have a bit of an easier time, as they've pretty much always got small things on the bench, whether it be Lunatone, whether it be Zoroark, other Gimmigholes, stuff like that. And of course, Fez comes into play quite often. If not, Genesect is left on the bench, which can be sniped twice and hopefully take a 3-prize turn. And you've pretty much always got two small 1 prizes on board that you can kind of take advantage of. However, Glenn's version of this deck plays the Charcadettes, plays the Gimmigholes. However, once everything is evolved, there's actually no small things that end up staying on the bench. So this was a little bit harder for me to navigate. And you can see in game one, I don't really have a direct plan on what I want to do. So Glenn kicks us off. I start a Froakie. Oh, it's important to say as well, there are a couple of proxies. You will see Mike's lovely Ignition Energy you drew for me. I have one full art Ignition Energy. The others did not arrive in the post in time. And then the Zoruas and the Zoroarks are just in black and white, but they pretty much look exactly the same because they're dark type cards anyway. But I'll show those to the camera at the thing because Mike's art is absolutely brilliant. But anyway, Glenn off to a decent start. He gets a Gimmighoul down. He gets another Gimmighoul on the bench and a Charcadet, and gets a Nest Ball pretty much straight away. We were sort of saying that, you know, he's got real no fear of going to the Genesect. I don't really have a way to boss and knock out the following turn, but he thought that it was better off to just go for another Gimmighoul in case I am able to snipe at any point or he doesn't get his hand going. And we sort of agreed that might be a better idea just to make sure that he's definitely got one Gholdengo still in play if I am able to get the Mirage Barrage off for him. And just the attachment to the active, as he knows I'm not taking a knockout this turn with my deck. And over to me. So I get another Zorua. I thought that the Zorua, because Glenn doesn't have those smaller things left on the board, I thought I was going to have to use Zorua to attack a couple of times, whether it's using Mind Jack, that attack with the Dark Energy, which does 30 damage for each of his bench Pokemon, just to get through a couple of 1 prizes for a decent trade. So I set 2 of those up instantly, thinking I was going to need those a little bit more often than I wanted. And then, of course, another Froakie and a Pidgeot. This is just another deck that I'm playing where Pidgeot is absolutely essential to everything that you do in the deck. Your turn 2, if you're able to get a Pidgeot out, it always looks really, really strong, especially if you get that turn 1 attachment down onto Froakie. So a pretty good setup from what I want to do on my first turn. The only thing missing, as I said, is a Water Energy, but I've got that Arven in hand and play a Energy Search in this deck, a card that I have added in from where I started. I sort of took it away at first and added it back in, changed to a Luminous, but I just thought the Energy Search was just such a nice card to be able to dive into the deck and grab that out, because it allows you to sort of get exactly the energy you want at the time, and there's no search for special energy outside of supporters, so I thought it was quite nice to be able to use an item for the turn to be able to find an energy when you really need it in a pinch. And I end up sticking that on the bench Froakie just in hopes that it doesn't get bossed up, and on the next turn I could maybe take advantage of Mirage Barrage if Glenn didn't evolve into all of his Gholdengos. The Arven, the only tools I play are Air Balloons, so always going to be grabbing Air Balloon every time I use Arven. I have experimented with a couple of different tools. I did have a Devo in here sometimes, but I just think that the knockout potential of using sort of like Mirage Barrage twice, or maybe taking a Fezandipiti and a 1 prize of stuff, always sort of felt a bit better than devolving stuff. And then I think that in something like the Guardy matchup, we're pretty much only ever using 1 Greninja and then going with our Zoroarks to finish off the game anyway. So we're never really going to have that time to set up sort of like 2 snipes and a devolve before Monkey Dory moves all of the damage, if you get what I mean. Because 2 Monkey Dory moves it down to 60 damage, and then you're no longer devolving Guardies all the way down to Rolls because they have 70 HP anyway. And I know that was very convoluted, but that's sort of where I ended up as to why I dropped the Devo. And I passed back to Glenn. So his next turn now, we were sort of discussing that he wanted to really prioritize getting his evolutions into play. It's quite funny because it's easy to forget that because Froakie is water type, you don't really want to jump into the Ceruledge, but in actual fact, you do, because it turns into a fighting type, so you can't knock it out. And it turns out Glenn's hand is shocking, it turns out. So I thought that he actually had like a definite Gholdengo Genesect in hand. So I was ready to sort of not be able to win the game, but he sort of passes, and my hand was just as bad. I was discussing, I was like ready to sort of concede, but the Zoroark and the Mind Jack coming in clutch and killing the Gimmighoul. This sort of allows him to get into the game a little bit, just because, you know, he draws, as you can see, I throw my cards down, he draws the Gholdengo off the top deck and gets into the game and sticks the Legacy Energy down. But this also opens up, he does need more draw, and the fact that I've already gone 1 prize up forces him at some point in the game then to sort of put down Fez, put down other things like Genesect to get more Gholdengos in play, for example, which then opens up my 3/4 prize turn. That's what I want. I want sort of like a nice small basic EX on the bench that I can take advantage of by sniping twice and then finishing off with Zoro even for 2 prizes. So Artisan comes down. Gholdengo looking really scary as a 260 HP Pokemon that hits like a train, and you only get 1 prize for now. And there it is. As I said, the Fezandipiti hits the board. That's exactly what I wanted to see. That means now that my Mirage Barrage is that much stronger and can push me ahead really, really quickly. So he's just going over what he's doing here, trying to figure out where is energy are most effective to be able to take a knockout on the Zoroark. And I do think it is really important he takes one here, because obviously if he doesn't knock out the Zoroark here, which is very easy for him to do, don't get me wrong, it's just 3 energy. But if he isn't, I'm actually able to tap into the Gholdengo again and chip off some of that HP. Once again, I will keep reiterating this over a couple of the number of games that I do on this deck. But Mirage Barrage, the much more powerful part of the Greninja EX card, and that would open up that option again, potentially even for a 4 prize turn if I was able to boss up the Fez. And I do apologise for the lighting as well on the back, but the far card by Glenn's discard, there was a light right above the table we're playing on, is another Charcadet, just so you're aware. But he discards a 3 energy, as you can see, a nice mixture of steel and fire. This deck playing Firebreather to take the Zoroark, and he goes down to 5 prizes as well. I look at my top deck, I go in, use Artisan, but I can tell you now, for an absolute fact, my hand was absolutely diabolical. There wasn't a lot I could do. I had no way to get into Pidgeot. I pretty much had no way to sort of get a meaningful attack off. And then on top of that, I was sort of looking at this Gholdengo with a legacy on it, just thinking, look, you know, if I can't get around this at any point, I'm screwed. So instead, I just decided to go for the Froakie, bring up the Charcadet as it has 2 retreat, use try bouncing, which does 30 damage, flip a coin. If tails, this attack does nothing. It hit heads, and I do a whopping 60 damage to that Charcadet, and just praying that he currently, with just 1 Gholdengo on board, doesn't have the means to get out of the active. But he had the Tyro in hand. So he jumped straight back up and put his Gholdengo back in the active. And as I said, that legacy energy, really scary. It just means he's going to be able to blow through all of my stuff without much risk of having his only attacker in the active. He's got Fez on the bench to draw cards and hopefully get into another one later in the game. And an Earthen Vessel played, 2 energy. That is all he needs to knock out a Froakie. And that the energy going into the discard, meaning now that you already had 4, but those superior energy retrievals come in active again now, looking a lot stronger. But of course, Ceruledge always getting that much stronger with every energy that hits the bin as well, with that Abyssal Flames attack. So Glenn uses coin bonus, draws 2 more cards, assesses what he has. He's looking at my board, how dismal and sad it is, and is deciding what to do here. Now, we were sort of talking about, getting rid of Frogadier means that I pretty much definitely don't get into Greninja next turn. But he chooses to hide a boss from me, should I say. I'm pretty sure he does have it, but only a Psyduck in hand for me. Frogadier, I need an absolute glory hit the Buddy-Buddy Poffin. All I've seen is basics this game. There's already an Artisan in play. I've got absolutely no problem getting basics into play. Buddy-Buddy Poffin was not the card I wanted to see. And this is where I sort of start to consider just scooping up my cards and not bothering anymore. You can see the 3rd Froakie hit the field. If you're wondering why this one's a little bit different than the deck list, Mike bought me Froakies from another store to come down to make sure I had the cards for tonight, because I accidentally only ordered 2 Froakie. When he arrived, it was the 60 HP one that allows you to grab 2 other Froakie with the first attack for 1 mortar energy. And I actually thought, hey, why not try this? I haven't actually seen if this is worthwhile playing anyway. But I've left the list exactly the same, because I would just play 3 of the 70 HP Froakie, just because I think you'd always rather call for family with Pidgey. It's a little bit more diverse if you're in that situation. Although you're putting a Pidgey up in the active, sometimes not being able to get into Pidgey on the next turn. I just think at the very least being able to get down whatever you want, but also even a Fez for when that Pidgey dies is much, much, much more powerful. So here is Glenn's turn. He is powering up, he is rearing up, and with that lovely bench space that he created by touring up that Charcadet, he gets down the Genesect. My fear was realised, and he is now into a fully 2 prize board apart from that Charcadet, meaning that Mirage as a option to sort of sneak back into the game through the back door is now sort of been taken away. I've got to get through something big every turn. And as we know with Greninja, my max damage output is 170. I don't play Dust Noirs. I don't sort of play any sort of large damage buffs. 170 is my limit unless I'm hitting for weakness. So the game not looking too good for me. Glenn down to 4 prizes already. I did take one, obviously, with Zoroark, but it's just sort of all downhill from here. And you'll slowly sort to see me roll into scooping up my cards here to end game 1. As I said at the start of the video, one of the games quite one-sided, sort of showed the weaknesses of playing 2 stage 2s and a stage 1. Is sometimes you can sort of get stuck in the early game a little bit. You want to prioritize getting a good setup so you can get Pidgeots, Greninjas, stuff like that onto board in the early game. But unfortunately, with the cards you need in the early game, that does sometimes mean you don't get things to follow up with. The reason I'm not commenting too much on what Glenn's doing, he's just superior energy retrieving for some energy in the discard. He only needs a couple to get through this Frogadier. Still just, I think, yeah, it's only 110, so 3 energy to get through this Frogadier. So he's really not concerned. Or is it only 2? It's 90, right? Yeah. So 90 HP, Frogadier. That is my fault. And just the 2 energy. He goes down to 3 prizes. I look at this super odd. As I said, I do not need anything to get me any more Pokemon. Super odd. Completely useless for me. And we head into game 2. So as we shuffle up for the next game, just reset the prize cards. And I think obviously the weaknesses, as I said, of the Greninja deck were shown there, just with those 2 stage 2s and a stage 1 being in there, as well as sort of tech cards as well, like Fez and Psyduck. Your board can get a bit full of Pokemon. There's a lot of search cards in the deck. There's a lot of cards that can, like Hilda can only search for evolution Pokemon. Colress can only search for stadiums and energy. And obviously, when you have something like a Pidgeot on board, you can sort of pull the glue out of the deck to sort of play these cards together in a sequential order that makes sense. However, sometimes, obviously, you saw there just sort of getting items to get basic Pokemon out and happening to roll into sort of a Zoroark, happening to roll into a Frogadier, but no more than that. And Gholdengo, an aggressive deck. And to be honest with you, I think the game probably would have been over even quicker if it was the Lunatone Solrock version, just because of those 1 prize attackers starting to grinch me as well. But Legacy Energy made it too big of a hill to climb as I set up for game 2. And as you can see, I've already got that Froakie. As I said, the 60 HP Froakie, we were trying that, but the list you saw at the start of the video doesn't play it. It is important to play 370s. I do think it's better overall for the Dragapult matchup. And as I said, I think Call for Family on Pidgey will come into play a little bit more often as Glenn mulligans. Now, for me personally, obviously in tournaments and stuff like that, if you have the advantage of being able to take a mulligan, if you have the advantage of being able to take a mulligan and your hand feels like you need it, you don't feel like you're going to have to research away extra resources by taking the mulligan, so on and so forth, then of course I always recommend it. But for me, a long time ago, there was a fantastic player in the game called Mark Lutz, and when I was playing with him and testing with him in Valencia before a regionals, he said to me, when you're testing, you should never take a mulligan, as you're not getting a true idea of how your deck runs without extra help. So I don't tend to do that when testing, if you're wondering as to why I didn't take a mulligan here. But anyway, we start off the game, Froakie in the active, Glenn starts the Genesect. That is always something I want to see. And I go for the Buddy-Buddy Poffin. Now, as we already saw in the first game, it's important to establish the board early. I want to try and get a Pidgeot up as soon as possible, but I also want to make sure that I can take advantage of a Greninja using Mirage Barrage the second turn. So as I've already got a Froakie in the active, it's only going to be one Froakie off of this Buddy-Buddy Poffin, and then I think I opted to go for a Pidgey. We will find out in due course, but is usually the way that I would go, and of course it is. I think that maybe if I'd started something different, even the Zorua, I probably would have gone for two Froakie, just to make sure that I can get that established on the second turn. And the Water Energy attach, I know that Glenn is not playing the Solrox, not playing the Lunatones, so I know that that energy is quite safe there, unless he gets a Air Balloon and the Gimmighoul rolls for 3 heads. But that is a risk I am willing to take. It's instead of trying to find a switch out the next turn, I'd rather just have the energy waiting there ready for the ignition to take extra prizes. Now, last game you didn't really get to see him, but you'll probably get to see the lovely art style of Mike's ignition energy in this next game, as I do use them a little bit more in this one, so they are great to see. And Glenn starts his turn. So him, I think the game plan stays pretty much the same. As you can see here, we're sort of discussing whether the Froakie actually is worth having, as I was sort of making the point that it can only grab Froakies. I only play 3 Froakies, so it's a case of like, I think Pidgey would always be better. We all agreed. Conversation finished there pretty much, but for now I stuck with a 61, and Glenn goes for the Genesect to go get 2 metal evolving Pokemon out of his deck. Nothing special in here apart from the Gholdengos, so you're just going to be seeing them come out into his hand, thinning out that. He was sort of expressing that his hand wasn't great for the first turn. Like, he had Arven, he had some other stuff, but it wasn't a lot to do afterwards based on his hand. So I obviously felt pretty good about that as a whole. But then, as you'll see, like, he does sort of find a way to get through that and get over the line. So he grabs Buddy-Buddy Poffin and Air Balloon here. So he doesn't want to be leaving Genesect in the active, realistically speaking, if he doesn't have to. Only because if I do hit that for 170, he's then going to try and find a Turo next turn, which is not a supporter you want to be playing on your second turn as Gholdengo to get the Genesect up. Otherwise, as I keep mentioning, I'm able to take those 3 or 4 prize turns. So he definitely wants to move that away at some point to make sure that I'm not able to take advantage of that. Or alternatively, know that at some point he's going to have to play the Turo and try and take advantage of that before I'm able to snipe it on the bench. So 2 Gimmighoul down, Glenn looking back through his hand, and I believe, yeah, the Air Balloon comes down here. It's funny to try and remember things as they happen, you know what I mean? And the Fire Energy goes onto the Gimmighoul, not something you see all that often, and it's a minor errand running here. So the other attack on the Gimmighoul, getting 2 basic energy, putting them in the hand, and Glenn is off to his start. So it passes back over to me. Looking at my hand, there is not an awful lot going on in there. So I've got the Hilda. I also had a Greninja in hand, but I don't have a Rare Candy to be able to jump up into it right now. So I'm looking through to sort of see what's a more likely scenario here. Am I going to be able... I don't even know what Mike put on the screen then, to be fair. So looking through the deck, and what I was trying to do is work out, am I more likely to be able to get into a Greninja if I sort of search for a Pidgeotto here, put that onto Pidgey, and hope that next turn, obviously, it, you know, doesn't get gusted and brought up, or do I just go for the Frogadier? My thinking was, if I go Frogadier at the back and attach an energy, it means I've got 2 threats set up. I only need to get into Greninja to start off the game, and I just move the Frogadier. Sorry, I really confused myself then because I thought I double attached, but I didn't. so, so yeah, I moved the Froakie to the bench just because essentially I thought that I've got the Greninja in hand already, so I can just drop that onto Frogadier and it is a threat ready to go. Alternatively, if that gets bossed, hopefully I'm able to get into Pidgeot on the following turn, using a Fezandipiti to get a bit more grow my hand, and yeah, I'd pretty much have a threat next turn no matter what. With Call for Family, I was going for a Zorua. I've also got a Zoroark in hand and a Dark Energy, so I know that I'm going to be able to attack with that no matter what next turn and get some decent damage down to be able to snipe late game. But also the Fez, I thought if he can't boss and the Pidgey goes down, I get to draw extra cards with Fez. If the Fez comes down and it gets baited and knocked out, at least I may be able to get into a Pidgeot the following turn, which doesn't seem terrible of a trade-off. I mean, I'd rather not go 2 prizes down, but I think that Pidgeot overall throughout the game would have been better for me than the Fez. So Glenn starts off his turn, again, seeing a slow start, but as you will see later on in this game, the strengths of this deck really do shine through as it gets into sort of the mid to the late game. So Glenn draws for turn. He's going to grab yet some more Gholdengos. His hand chock-a-block with them. No shuffle of his hand yet. So the 2 he got last time, and of course going back in now to get at least another 1. And I'm pretty sure he prized the other 1 in the end. So 1 going to hand, or maybe he only plays 3. I'm not actually sure. I don't actually know his deck list off by heart. Obviously know mine. This was sort of the first time I'd seen him playing it. Him and Mike had been working on it over Christmas holidays, but I didn't actually get to see them over the Christmas holidays. As I mentioned in the last video, my wife was ill and had surgery, so didn't get to see them, but they've sort of been working on this and cooking with it for a little bit. So they are pretty competent with the lines and what they're supposed to be doing with the deck by now, which is always cool to sort of come up with innovation with your friends, right? So the coin bonus is popping off, and he starts by drawing 2 cards. You know, we're sort of discussing here that it's probably better. Obviously, I know what my hand is, Glenn doesn't. So you always got to play for, you know, pretending you don't have the full knowledge and what would be optimal normally. And I said that you would always probably go for the Fezandipiti here if you have the option to, just because you get 2 prizes, you get ahead, and I still need quite a lot of resources to get into the Pidgeot. I said, clearly, based on my turn last turn, I don't have the best hand. So it's not like I'm just going to be dropping Candy Pidgeot like it's nothing. So I do need to see a lot of cards. I do need to sort of put combos together. So I would be chasing down the Fezandipiti. And after that discussion, starts coin bonusing, starts getting those energies together into hand, attaches for turn, as the fire's already there, but do need metal to attack. And he bosses the Fez up and has the necessary energy of 5 to take a KO there, and goes 2 prizes up. And I promote the Frogadier as I know I have Greninja in hand, so I was pretty happy about that, so I could get the Greninja down. But I don't believe I had another water energy in hand at this point, so I was sort of trying to come up with a way to get an attack off this turn. As I mentioned, I did have the Zoroark and the Dark in hand, so I started eyeing up a way to sort of get some damage down this turn, looking through my deck, seeing what would be the better thing to attack with. You see the proxy Zorua hit the deck now. They don't look too far apart from each other. At least you can still tell what it is, right? And so, yeah, it was sort of like an awkward position here where I had enough that was keeping me in the game. I mean, Glenn obviously got a good 2 prize knockout that turn, but, you know, he sort of got the bare minimum, 2 Gholdengo, not a lot going on, not really many other backup attackers or ideas and stuff. So, as you can see, here's the Zoroark and a Night Stretcher for the water energy, instead of attaching the Dark that you see just then when I shuffle my hand around. And I will go for the Shinobi Blade, 170 damage to Glenn's active, and I get to search my deck for any card I want and add it to my hand. And I'm pretty sure I went for a Grand Tree here, if not a Colress. Can't remember. Obviously, I'm not going to reveal it to myself either, so let alone. So if I don't know, you guys definitely don't know. But I was pretty much hoping here that I could grab a card. I'm pretty sure it was Colress, because I thought that I could get the energy and the stadium to get into Greninja the following turn. But my thinking was essentially, if Glenn had the knockout on the Greninja for 6 energy now, I could keep a 1 prize board with Zoroark, because I had the Dark in hand, take a knockout with the Zoroark with Mind Jack, taking me down to 4. then the following turn I could drop the Grand Tree, the Colress, and sort of finish off the game from there using Iono and putting Glenn behind. So that is the line that I instantly started playing towards now. And so yeah, I am pretty sure I grabbed Colress, I believe, out of there, but we'll see next turn. So into Glenn's turn though, as I was yapping over that, all he's done is used a Earthen Vessel, grabbed a Steel and a Fire. Unfortunately, Ceruledge, not really a feature so far in these. Glenn not gone for it, and I do think that obviously the amount of the energy that he needs to get through a Greninja is a little bit unreliable to use it as an attacker in the early game, and we did sort of discuss that putting it down to sit on the board can be a problem, because Zoroark can actually copy its second attack, which is, I think, something Amethyst, which does 270, so it can go straight through a Ceruledge, while it's sat in front of it. So, and Glenn showing off his brand new full art Firebreather as his little spice in the deck. And this sort of shows the little burst potential you can get from this card. Grabbing 3 energy straight from the deck, putting them in hand. Obviously doesn't seem too much better than a Vessel at that point, but Glenn already with energy in hand and used quite a few to take some knockouts already, and doesn't really need to use any other support of this turn. He's got plenty of draw on board with the Gholdengos. He doesn't need to boss the Greninja, it's already in the active. And as you can see, there is chock-a-block amounts of energy in his hand already. I think there's 4 or 5 there already. Yeah, 5. So he's going to use that Superior, getting rid of the Nest Ball, and getting rid of, I think, and Fire here. Yeah, he gets rid of Fire, takes 4 back. I think attaches to the bench Gholdengo here as well, maybe. So there's 8 in hand. Yeah, my memory is actually pretty good, to be fair. I think I remember quite a lot of what's going on. And then takes the knockout on the Greninja. So from here, it looks like I am downhill. It looks like I am down, I was going to say the S-word creek then, but trying to keep it PG. Down Pooh Creek. And there's not really a lot of way back. But I knew I had lines to get into this. I knew I could get Pidgeot. I knew that I could Iono him to, a really low hand size after using the Zoro, keeping a 1 prize board, and that was my out. That was my only way to win, was to take a knockout this turn. As you can see, I did use the Colress, so I did grab Colress there with the Zoroark, so grabbing the Grand Tree and not a Proxy Ignition Energy, the only real full art one I had. Don't ask me why none of us had Ignition Energy between us. Glenn forgot his binder, and I specifically asked him to bring it. So we were stuck with proxies, unfortunately, because I'd never played a deck with Ignition Energy before. So grabbing the Grand Tree. So as you'll see though, is I don't want to drop Grand Tree straight away. I want to keep my board as a 1 prize board here, because Glenn just needs 1 knockout. I know he'll have access to boss pretty easily, especially if I'm able to take a knockout here with his Zoroark. So using Mind Jack with the Dark Energy, taking a KO, going down to 4 prizes myself, knowing that Glenn cannot win the game this turn. He doesn't play Briar in this deck, but even if he did have like a Charcadet down, stuff like that, he would need to find Briar. I'm not on 2 prizes and stuff, so like there's just no possible way that Glenn could have won this turn, and that is where we want to be. We want to force him down to 1 prize. Gholdengo draws an awful lot of cards, so we want to make it as awkward as possible for him. And on that note, he starts off with a coin bonus. Now you can see there's an awful lot of energy in his discard, which means he is, and use the Firebreather to grab 3 fire out of the deck, as we saw on the last turn. So we know that he's going to have to use a superior energy retrieval here. So, we're also trying to run him out of resources. Zoroark does need 3 energy to knock it out. So we're pretty thankful for that matter, as it's not sort of as easy as just getting rid of that Pidgey there for 50, Zorua for 70, stuff like that. He has to get rid of 3 here, or obviously use up a boss. Either way, we are making him use resources. We want to make it as hard as possible. And most importantly, our win con hits the board. The Fezandipiti. So we were talking after the game, was it worth dropping the Fezandipiti, as, it does give me the line to take 3-4 prizes at the end of the game. But he was saying that he doesn't think he would have been able to reach any sort of knockout on the Zoroark, which would have set up the same win con anyway the following turn. And so we sort of came to the agreement that, it didn't really make a difference in the end. as he needed to get the energy to advance his board state and take a knockout here, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to. And he uses 3 fire, takes Zoroark, he goes down to 1 prize, and our sort of game plan, he says, on to you, show me the plan, essentially. So the Grand Tree drops, and we're going to go in, get a Pidgey, get rid of this, because we're going to gust up the Genesect here with a counter catcher. So Grand Tree getting Pidgeotto Pidgeot to start us off. You can see those lovely ignition energy in the deck. Yours Finest by Mike Tchaikovsky. So I've got the shiny Pidgeottos as well, which is lovely. So Pidgeotto down, Pidgeot. And as we know, Quick Search, one of the most powerful abilities in the game. I want to use that to get our Gust. So looking through my hand, Iono is already there. And I want to bring up that Genesect, Iono, and make it as awkward as possible for Glenn to be able to get the 6 energy he needs to take a knockout on the Pidgeotto. And here, Pidgeotto can hit 120, discard my Grand Tree, okay? Which means he can't jump straight into another Gholdengo, in my eyes. I didn't know that he, like, prize one didn't have like a stretcher for one either way. So I was going very much off the assumption that Iono here, and he wasn't going to be able to close out the game. So we shuffle in. Glenn down to 1, me to 4. Draw up. Glenn takes his 1 card. And I remember this bit quite vividly now that I just said that I needed just, a little bit off the Iono, maybe like one of the pieces to help me get into Greninja the following turn. Unfortunately, my hand was terrible, and it's Pidgeot, a Lilies, a Switch, and a Lilies. So it was pretty much nothing useful. Glenn showed me then that he had the 1 price Cerulege that discards 4 energy from your hand, pretty much both saying that, yeah, Iono works, but on both ends of the table, not just his. So with that, just using the Pidgeot and getting the counter catcher and bringing up Genesect and pretty much hoping that he's, obviously he's got access to air balloons, he's got access to Terra and stuff like that. I didn't think that it was a guarantee that he would get stuck. It was more hoping that he would only be able to draw, 3 or 2 cards, depending if you can move Gholdengo back into the active, and hopefully have to use an Arven or a Tiro to move the Genesect, meaning he didn't have Boss to just be able to kill a Froakie. So he draws his card. I'm sitting there, I'm just hoping I'm able to get an attack off of the Pidgeot. That is all I want. The next turn, as long as I get through this turn, I had a really, really good chance of winning. It was unlikely that he was going to be able to get through. If he missed the knockout on the Pidgeot, it'd be unlikely he was then able to get the knockout on the Greninja. So I was 1 turn ahead of myself. I didn't get rid of the Grand Tree at this point, using the Grand Tree. But then, as I mentioned before, he prized the other Gholdengo. And I made a joke there when I went in the air. I said, I knew you prized it. And he was like, I told you I prized it. And I was like, yeah, I know. I knew you prized it. So that's why I wasn't as keen to get rid of it. I remember that bit now. So, but obviously, a really good strategy that for when you're playing into things like Guardy or Dragapult. Sometimes you can actually use Pidgeot as an early game attacker because you can get into it using your Grand Tree, which will allow your setup to sort of be a little bit more consistent. Get rid of that Grand Tree then, so they can't use it themselves, which is obviously a really effective strategy. So after the Cerulege, he gets Pokegear. Looking through the top 7 cards, I was obviously thinking if it's Arven, it's game over. Hopefully get, like a Vessel and a air balloon, stuff like that. But he gets the Turo, which means the Genesect can move this turn. But exactly as we said a couple of minutes ago, using Turo means that he cannot use Boss, which means the likelihood is my Froakie and my Zorua are safe for now. So it's just a bank now on whether he is able to use his coin bonuses to get into enough energy to knock out the Pidgeot. So the first one goes 2 for it being the active, and he draws the Blowtorch, another full art that he picked up for this deck, and attaching the Air Balloon, which means that he was able to draw 4 cards, which is something that I really hoped wouldn't happen, but it did nonetheless. So you got the Terra and the Air Balloon for the most optimum way of getting all the cards, and you can see it in the hand. He has got the Superior, but that is only 4 energy. And the biggest discussion of the game happened now. And what actually happened is that Glenn was unsure, so he gets rid of the Grand Tree with that, knowing that then it's much harder for me to get into Greninja. I need a little bit more of a combo. He's seen my hand. He knows that the lilies are in there and stuff. But the conversation we're having here is that he didn't know whether I played more Iono or not. Now, I obviously know that, you know, in casual shit like that, you know, like you can just say I don't. But we were trying to play under as official rulings and play as possible. So we were sort of discussing, would I use the 3 energy to hit here? I know I have another Superior. I know I can get through the Pidgeot later on in the game. I know I can get through the Greninja later on in the game. So do I hit it knowing I need less later on? And we were sort of discussing that he thinks that if he didn't know I played just one Iono in this scenario against this deck, not knowing who was playing it, he would assume it plays more than one. So he went for the play that I would have just Iono'd those energy anyway, so he wouldn't be able to hold them. So that is why he went for the hit there for, I think it was 150. It was just 3 energy because he used the Blowtorch. So I use Quick Search, and I've got the Rare Candy in hand, which I top decked, which was very, very lucky on my end. And then I was able to go in and just grab a Greninja, and there it is. I was panicking for a second. I was like, wait a minute, I swear I get Greninja here. But it got to the end of the deck and didn't get it out. So there it is. Greninja comes down. And now, again, I'm sort of playing this cat and mouse of hoping Glenn can't see all the pieces, isn't able to get boss, isn't able to get all the energy off just, you know, potentially 3 draws from the Gholdengo. Mike looking at his top deck, seeing whether I should just scoop now, as this was obviously me backed right into a corner. But I'm really hoping that Iono worked, it sticks, and he is not able to close out the game. And here we have it. I burn a switch. Obviously, just to thin out the deck, I didn't want it to go back in with the lilies. I don't need the switch anymore. I'm pretty much banking on the fact that I win with this Greninja in the active for the next 2 turns. So I thought, burn it. All I need is to guarantee myself ignition energy, and I need to guarantee myself a boss to bring that Fezandipiti up and pretty much do. So I'm going to do 170 to the Gholdengo now. And then next turn, I need to bring up the Fezandipiti, hit that for 240 with a weakness, and snipe the remaining damage onto the already damaged Gholdengo. So knowing that, only drawing 6 cards, I burn the switch, make sure it doesn't go in the deck, and I need here to see boss or ignition, so at the very least, I can Pidgeot for the other half of that the following turn. So it was a big shuffle, but I was obviously starting to get a little bit more hopeful that the comeback was well and truly on. And as you can see, boss is drawn. So I was really happy with that. The rest of the hand, really useless though, like a Pidgeot, Greninja, Buddy-Buddy, like no stuff that I really need. So I ended up attaching the water, pretty much saying that I don't need to see ignition. I can just use Pidgeot for a water, anything like that, anything that could possibly go wrong. If I'd forgotten to prize check for ignition, so on and so forth, I was just like attach the water, and there's no real way here that I don't get trapped. There's a switch in hand, so I could always move Zorua as well. So I was plain sailing. So Glenn now essentially just needs, all he wants is 6 energy or a boss and 3 energy. So he needs 4 cards essentially, no matter what, to win the game with a combo, and more than 4 cards if he needs to use something like a Superior, as we know he does. So 2 cards in hand currently, the one that he had left, which I believe is that Cerulege, and then the one he drew for turn. He's sort of analysing right now, sort of counting the energy, looking what he has in deck. Him and Mike are talking about, you know, do you go for the coin bonus first, or do we use, you know, other stuff first, and so on and so forth. So they're having that little discussion there. And then he coin bonuses up to the 3 and plays a Super Rod. And yeah, I believe, yeah, he had like a fire, yeah, flame blower, fire breather, whatever it's called, in hand. So I believe the play was, do we shuffle the energy back in and use the flamethrower, fire breather? Why do I keep saying it wrong? I've just said it wrong about 5 times in 2 minutes. But I was pretty much saying that, like, if you don't have a way to shuffle my hand or take the knockout, like, I definitely have to win. So he was sort of like, okay, like, this is what I would do anyway, just in the sense of, you know, do I, you know, shuffle in? Do I go into the Gimme Ghoul and pretty much say that, you know, do you have boss and hide behind a 1 prizer? So shuffles in the fire, and he just said that, like, obviously I would go for the fact that hopefully next time or next turn I'm able to hit with Gholdengo's withdraw the last superior energy retrieval in the deck that I didn't see, and be able to knock out the Greninja. But for now, he's pretty much hoping I don't have boss / ignition, because he knows that obviously I can do the snipe. We obviously, as the audience, know that I do. So it's you know, really nice to see that I was able to pull off the comeback, and you will see him now sort of pass his turn over. I can't remember if he retreats or not. I can't remember if we had like a switch or another air balloon in hand. Obviously, it doesn't really matter because I've got a boss, but I think he was sort of just saying, if you have it, you have it at this point. And I believe they were also talking about WWE at this point as well. They were sort of, and I was looking at the camera like, please don't waste time. So he does the best that, oh, that was it. He didn't retreat. He brings up Zorua and says, I don't have it. So this is where the switch obviously came in handy. Switch, boss, Fez, and ignition energy. And there you have it. 240 is the active. Knock out the Gholdengo for 4 prizes. Win the game. Little cheer there, as I was just happy the game plan came off. And I think that really, really sort of showcased the strength of the deck. I think that, you know, in the scenario of being that far behind in the game against an aggressive deck and being able to come back using snipes, you know, hand disruption, you know, active store, stuff like that is really, really cool. So that is sort of the reason I've been enjoying this deck, as it has sort of a couple of different avenues. As we saw, you know, weaving in that Zorua out there as a 1 prize attacker, you know, that he had to get rid of because it's doing pretty decent damage and 2-shotting him. So I do think the deck has a little bit of everything, and something that I've really enjoyed working on and with. As I said, the deck lists to accompany are at the start of the video. I just have in my notes here, just bear with me. So I just want to shout out Glenn, one of my very, very best friends, a fantastic player, very, very good at the game, and one of my favorite testing partners. He has a TikTok himself that he often uploads to his deck profiles and stuff like that. So if this Cerulean idea is something that you like the sound of, he pretty much said that from the list he played the other night, he would drop a nest ball and add 1 more Buddy-Buddy Poffin, essentially swapping the counts 4 nest ball to 3 and Buddy-Buddy Poffin up to 4. So yeah, he just said to, you know, pass that on. But you can actually find him on TikTok at best of 1 TCG. I will link it in the description below if you do want to check that out, if his deck idea is something you want to see. He's got a lot of experience with Cerulean already this season, getting a couple of day 2s, so doing very well there overall. But for me, I did play some other games, which I will work on editing as well, and we'll get those out. And I think once the sort of tabletop games are out, we'll have a look where I think the list is after that. I don't think I would make any changes apart from the 60 HP Froakie actually being the Froakie that it should be. But yeah, I think that after that, then we'll do sort of a video on where I've ended up with the list from that, and with some more testing between all this, and then some online games with that, sort of showing a little bit more of a variation of matchups. As I know, the Gholdengo we just played isn't necessarily standard, so I will obviously play online, as you know, my friends are testing their decks for Birmingham as well, and their ideas. So it's just a case of, you know, maybe online we'll get to show you something a little bit more standard. As for me, thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any questions about the list, any questions about matchups, how to coordinate them, everything like that, I am free and available at any time. I do obviously offer coaching as well, but don't let that hold you back from just sending me a DM, asking a comment, giving a like, and just asking any question about the deck. I will always help. It is truly a huge passion of mine to help people learn and get better at the game. So anything I can do to help, please do not hesitate to ask. I will always pride myself on sort of coming up with ideas and trying to share them with everyone else. I want everyone to have success. And if I don't win Birmingham with this deck, I would be over the moon for someone else to. You know what I mean? So any questions, please let me know. And without further ado, I will see you in the next video. Enjoy and peace out. Much love, Professor Benji. See you next time.